Greetings and salutations, and welcome to a game of Europa Universalis 4, sort of walkthrough or beginner's tutorial, where my goal is to try to introduce new players to the game, and as we go through playing as a nation, I would like to explain my reasoning on why I'm making each decision that I'm making, so that it helps people that have never been exposed to the game or are very new to it to get some insight into what sorts of decisions they should be making and why, and how they could run their country, how to develop certain strategies, and all that. So what is Europa Universalis 4? If you're not familiar with it, it is a strategy game where you start in 1444, pick any country in the world that is a nation at that point and lead it through its destiny for the next several centuries up until 1820, if you can survive that long. So let's go ahead and play a single player. You can also, if you're starting it up, you might want to go through the tutorial and test it out. Now I'm playing on the current version of the game with all of the downloadable content or expansions, so your exact experience may differ. If you don't have downloadable content, and then you should probably look for some of the other videos that are out there. I did one on Bohemia for the last patch with no downloadable content loaded, but certain very critical things have changed since then, and mostly what I was trying to do is walk through a player who had requested assistance making sense of the interface and trying to give pointers on where you get the information that you need. But for us, we're going to just pick a single player. And I do want to point out a few things about the interface before we get started here. So first of all, there are several different start dates. You could start later than 1444 if you choose to. These ones are balanced the best. Notice these first four start dates are all on 11 November 1444. They're all the same. The only difference is when you click on one, it's going to move you to a different geographic location. And so the Rise of the Ottomans looks at Europe, and it lists down here, showing the country flag, all of the nations that the game suggests for new players that they think are interesting. And these first three in the green aura, green, radiant light behind them, are ones that are highly recommended for new players. If you're new to this game, or even new to the region that you're going to be playing in, they've played it before, but you might not be familiar with Sub-Saharan Africa and you're going to play there, then I would actually suggest writing down the names of each of these nations. Because not only are they interesting to play as, that they're probably some of the more important nations in that region. So potentially those nations could be your ally. So for instance, if you're playing as Castile, I would write down that Portugal and France and England, Austria, etc. are important nations, and then those are the ones that you might want to pick as your allies if possible. So the Rise of the Ottomans, again, is Europe-based. And if you're interested in playing in an African setting, you can go to Empires of the Sands, and it lists out their suggestions for playing in that region. And again, if you're going to play there, write these down if you're a newer player. First Nations is all about the North American tribes. The tribes are the nations in the Mexico region, the Nahuatl and Mayans, and then the Incan civilizations. Kingdoms of the East are all of the South and East Asian nations. What information do you also need to know? Well, before you pick a country to play, you can go here to Options, and you can set the difficulty that you want to play at. And there's also an option of Lucky Nations. that these are nations when in the computer hands will be getting a bonus. We'll be getting all of these bonuses are listed in the green. And if you're not playing on Ironman, which we'll go over, as a player you would get these as well. So if you want historical lucky nations, like you expect that Castile and England and France will be successful, then that's more likely to be the outcome here. If you want something less predictable, you could set it to random, so the nations that get these bonuses will just be randomly selected. And one thing that you probably want to have off when you're starting to play is this use dynamic province names set to no. And what that does is, imagine you're Poland. If you're playing as Poland and you start conquering some of this territory of a German culture, it will change the names of these provinces from something like Ortelsburg to give them the Polish name for that territory. So I would suggest having that off if you're learning the game, because it does add a little bit of flavor, and maybe you really have strong feelings about what a nation should be called, what these provinces should be called. If your country of choice, has historical presence there. But if you're trying to learn it, it might be confusing if you can, if provinces keep changing names based off of the owner. So Kovna might be conquered by the Livonian Order, and that might later be conquered by Muscovians. Could be changing names, and then you'd never remember which, what the current name of that province is. That might be a little confusing. So I would have that off. Okay, so we are going to pick a nation. I'm going to place Delhi. Why Delhi? Well, Delhi's not one of the suggested nations, but I've been seeing them usually in the past. I've seen them fail repeatedly, but recently, in a lot of games, I've seen them doing really well, so it's got me kind of excited about Delhi. I did play one game with them. I started a game right before I did this, just to kind of get a sense for what Delhi's like in the current incarnation of the game, and they were kind of fun. So what can we expect? And what kind of information can we get before we even start up the game? Well, it shows us the flag up here and tells us like what kind of technology group we are. So we're Indians. And it tells us our religion, Sunni Muslims. It tells us our government type. And depending on the country that you pick, you could have a different kind of gameplay experience. If you pick some of these Khanates that are successors to the Mongol Empire, that's going to be a very different experience than if you play as the Western European settled, like feudal monarchy, or if you play as a merchant republic, or some sort of theocracy. So they will have different mechanics, and you could expect that you'll have different strengths and be able to have different restrictions. But Delhi is an Indian Muslim sultanate, and they are independent. They're not ruled by any other country. And we can see our starting ruler's attributes. On a scale of 0 to 6, he's very bad at administering our country, coming in at a 1. The higher the better. So 0 to 6, 0 is the worst possible, 6 is the best. He's a 1. He's really bad. And he's just as bad on diplomacy, and just as bad as military. So he's not very good. And it tells us also a set of ideas for our country that will modify perhaps our economy, our technology, something about our country, and that will make playing as Delhi feel much, much different than playing as somebody like the papacy. They will have a different set of ideas. And Delhi, what they have at the start of the game, they have two things called traditions. We get a bonus to our cavalry. Our horsemen are more competent. And we are very tolerant of heathens, that is, people of different religious groups altogether. So we're Sunni Muslim, and there are several there are several branches of Islam. But other groups, like, say, Hindus or Christians or Buddhists, would be considered heathens because they're not within the same religious group. And we're tolerant of them. And then throughout the course of play, we are going to be unlocking other bonuses for a nation that are going to define what it's like to be Delhi. It's going to give us a different gameplay than if we were, again, France or the papacy or whatever else. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this started. We need to click play, and we have two choices of the game mode. First of all, we can go to normal mode, and this lets you select any difficulty that you want. So you can play on easy if you'd like, or very easy. You can play on very hard. It allows you to use console cheats. You can cheat in that game, which might be useful to you if you are just learning it. And you can have multiple different saves. So you could save the game before you try doing something bold. If you want to see if you're successful, like plan on invading one of your neighbors, and you don't know if you can win. Well, you could save it in normal mode. And if the war goes badly against you, you could go back and try something different. The other option is Ironman Mode. Ironman Mode is the only mode that allows you to get achievements. And in this mode, the lowest difficulty that you can play on is normal. And you have to have your lucky nations set to their historical settings. When you're playing on Ironman Mode, you cannot use the console cheats. You can't switch to other nations. And you're limited to one save, where it auto-saves. So every 3 to 6 months, I think it is, it will auto-save the game. And every time something major happens, like you go to war, it will automatically save for you. So you have one save, and if something happens, it is saved, and you cannot go back and try to change it. A lot of people will use normal mode for doing like tutorial type videos. We're going to go through Ironman Mode. And when we do that, we have to pick the name of our save. It'll take it a second to load up. And we're just going to do Delhi. Nothing clever. And it takes a minute to launch this game. So I want to really quickly go over some of the basics of the interface. I don't want to swamp you with too much information right away, but as different issues become relevant to us, we will focus on them and explore them as fully as I think is necessary. Feel free to ask questions in the comment section, and I'll try to provide as much information as I can. Okay, so first of all, we should pay attention to this little area, the top right of our screen. It tells us the current date, and we can set the speed of the game by pressing this plus button. I should probably keep it around speed 3 when you're first learning the game. And you can click up here in the corner to pause or unpause the game, or you can use the spacebar to do so. And then this will tell you, if you're playing on Ironman Mode, any achievements that are possible for you to get when playing as your current country. And this little button drops down an outliner that provides you with some easily referenced critical information about your country. So for instance, it tells us that we have 3 diplomats that are currently free, that they're not being used for any other job. And we have 1 merchant that's not being used for any job. One's hard at work on something. And we've got 20,000 troops split between 2 armies. It tells us who the player is here, and you could get more or less information. We're going to take off the human players because there's only one of us. That's most useful for multiplayer. So I would generally have, if you're learning the game, everything turned on, except for provinces, because that just lists out the provinces that you control, and that could be a list hundreds of provinces long. And I would also disable human players, have the rest of the little circles filled in. Again, depending on which downloadable content you have, you may see different things. You might not have estates if you don't have the common sense downloadable content. So what other information should we be concerned with? Well, here's our flag, our main country view, and this we use to open up a menu that provides a lot of information and interactions for our country spread out across many tabs, and we will be returning to this time and time again. Right down here, if you have the Rights of Man downloadable content, you should see a list of the greatest 8 powers in the world, and then it'll list your nation, if you're not one of them, for comparison. And down here in the bottom left-hand corner of that little icon, sorry, my cat has come in and hears me talking and wants to have his say. But he's not very good at this game, so we're not going to listen to most of his advice. Come on, cat! And yes, I think cat is a perfectly acceptable name for cat, so we're going to have to just deal with that. Okay, bottom left-hand corner of our little emblem here is production interface. And this is a shortcut that lists your land troops. You can build troops right out of this. You can hire mercenaries right out of it. And ships as well. You could make buildings right out of here if you have the money. So this is your sort of construction interface, is how you can think of it, production interface. And we have a list of alerts about things that we need to address or might be of interest or worry. The red ones are usually things that are worrying that you need to address urgently. And we have this information up at the top. So what does it tell us? Some of these are important that you need to know right away. First of all, your money. How many ducats, how many coins you have in your treasury. And next to it, there's going to be a green plus letting you know if you're making a profit each month. There'll be green plus, and you could leave the cursor hanging over there to know exactly how much money you are earning each month. If you're losing money, it will show you right here a red minus sign. I'm going to lower my volume just a little bit. And while I'm doing that, just check on our video and make sure that all of our sound is working and everything like that. And it looks to be. Next to our treasury is our manpower. And that's one of your resources that you need to pay attention to, because that's what you use to replenish beat up units of troops if they suffer casualties, or to recruit new troops. If you run out of manpower, you cannot recruit new troops. Next to it is sailors, which is largely the same thing, but for ships. And you'll notice we have no sailors. That is because this is our country up here in Delhi. It's green olive color on the map. And we, of course, have no coast. So, not a whole lot of sailors. A powerful naval country. We also have stability, which is not something that we can spend. It's just a static, passive trait that lets us know on a scale of -3 to +3 how stable our country is. The lower it is, the more likely we will face revolts. The higher it is, the more stable our country is, and consequently, the more comfortable and safe our merchants will feel, and we'll get bonuses. Be less likely to face revolts. Next to that number is our corruption, and that represents how much of the wealth and resources of the country, intellectual resources, whatever, are being sucked up by selfish people or interest groups that aren't going for the good of our nation. So the higher your corruption is, the worse off your country is going to be in almost all cases. That's not something you could spend for anything. It's just, again, a passive trait. And then our prestige, how much other countries respect us. On a scale of -100, meaning people laugh at us, to positive 100, meaning that people respect us. And we're negative. It's -13 in the red, so people don't really take us seriously yet. And next to that is our legitimacy, which is on a scale of 0 to 100, showing us how much faith our public and our elites have in our rule. The higher that is, the more easily we'll be able to avoid rebellions. And this is unique to monarchies. For some other form of government like a republic, or steppe nomads, or some sort of horde country, one of the successors of the Mongol Empire or something, we're going to see something different here. And then power projection is how much we have confronted our enemies. The more we do so, the more bonuses we will get. And then here are the agents of our state, our merchants, our colonists, if any, our diplomats, and our missionaries. And beneath it is a very important set of resources called Monarch Points collectively, split into 3 different categories: administrative, diplomatic, and military. And each month we're going to be getting some of these points. There's going to be things that influence exactly how much we earn each month, and we could use those for our benefit. So this is an active resource that we could spend. And administrative power can be used for administrative technology, and we'll take a closer look at that. But it could also be used to make our state stable if we're starting to suffer from instability. And it could be used to, if we conquer some neighboring provinces, we could expand our governmental administration over it and then start collecting taxes from that territory. Our diplomatic power is used for diplomatic technology. We'll take a closer look at. That's the technology that we use for interactions with other countries. It's also naval technology, trade technology, and spy technology. We can use our diplomatic power for certain things that we will get into in greater detail. Its primary uses for technology. It's got occasional uses beyond that. Military power. It's just the same. It is used for military technology. Our land-based forces, our army, infantry, cavalry, artillery. And we could use it to suppress rebels if we need to, or hire generals to lead our armies. And every month we will accumulate some of these points that then we can put to good use when we have enough. So before we unpause the game, we want to make sure that we are making use of our diplomats and our merchants, that the agents of our state are hard at work serving our goals. Wow, I'm uploading a video and it told me it's already up. That's great. Okay, so let's look at some of our alerts as well. So what's our first alert? We have rebels inside of our country. And not every country is going to start with rebels inside of them. We can see that we've got an army of 20,000 men here, 6,000 here, 14,000 here. But there are 30,000 rebels inside of our country that are near victory. And different kinds of rebels are going to do different kinds of things. For instance, you can have peasant rebels that want to drive down the amount of taxes that they have to pay. You could have separatists that want to create a new nation out of some of your territory, like these guys. They're Marwari separatists. And their goal, if they're victorious, is going to be to try to create the state of Marwar out of this country that they're currently in. But these guys are pretenders. They want to overthrow the government and install a new ruler. And they're very, very close to achieving that goal. And we can click on them for more information. And where it takes us is the appropriate tab in our main country view. Again, this tells us a whole bunch of information about our country. It'll tell us who our ruler is, who our heir is, anyone that we've hired to advise our rulers, what our government is like, how we interact with our ethnic minorities. And it'll tell us about our diplomatic situation, our finances. And our different alerts up here will take us to different parts of this main country view. So for instance, this religious one will take us to the religious tab. This mission related will take us to mission. We can look at the rebel tab and see that we have Delian pretender rebels. A pretender is somebody who's not the heir. It has some sort of ambition for the throne. And they would like to install somebody named Balal the First Lodi. Balal Lodi the First as our king. And if he's successful, they will install Balal Lodi the First on our throne, which will kill our king or send him into exile and remove our heir as well, and replace him with whoever Balal Lodi's appointed heir is. So that's something we might want to deal with, but again, they have 30,000 troops, we have 20,000, they outnumber us 3-2. And they already control half of our country, so they're going to win. Now our next alert is that we have too few rivals. Before we unpause it, we want to sort that out. So what's a rival? A rival is a publicly declared enemy that we cannot ally with, that we're letting everyone in the world know is a nation that we would like to bring harm to and we will oppose on the global stage. So you can think of Britain and France for much of this period, 15th through 19th century history, were often rivals of each other. And it takes us to our diplomacy screen, where we see some information about our country, and we could see that we have an enemy, Jaunpur. Jaunpur has declared us as their rival. They have declared that they would like to oppose us on the world stage, and they'll be friendly to people that hate us, and vice versa. And then Multan. And if you want to find out where these nations are, like for instance Delhi, we can actually just click on our flag here, and it will center on our capital. Our other option would be to go down here. We have a mini map that we can use to zoom around the world, and we can customize the information that we see. If we want to know like the religious makeup of the area around us, we can look at that. If we want to know what trade is like in this region, we can see that. If we want to look at geography, we can look at like where the mountain ranges are. And you can customize all of these buttons, and you could nest multiple different maps in here, so you can toggle between, for instance, the political map and the ruling family map. You can see like, where various ruling families rule, and so on. It's got a lot of control. And at the bottom here, we have a couple things that are of interest. First of all, the menu, where we can save things or exit. And the ledger, that tells us tons of information about what's going on in our world. We could find out how much money other nations have in their treasury, what their income is. So if we want to find out who the richest nations are in the world, we could see like the Ming dynasty of China has a huge treasury. They're the richest people. And we want to know who makes the most money each month. Well, again, it's Ming. And you could organize these based off of the smallest countries, see who is the largest countries. You can organize them by inverse or alphabetical order or inverse alphabetical order. And we could check to see, who's doing well in technology. We can check to see how the comparative religions of the world are doing. There's lots of information here. We can find out the size of people's armies. Largest army in the world, smallest army in the world, etc. So we can see Timurids, these guys over here, are have the largest army in the world. And we could click on them here and click to go to their country. But for our rivals, I was going to say, last thing of interest to us beyond this ledger is the Find Province. We could actually tell the game to move us, like if we want to find about Ming, we could type in Ming here and zoom to Ming's capital. And it actually can distinguish and say, Ming, are you asking about the country? And it will show their flag. But we could also look into cities like Delhi. To the city of Delhi, and it will outline it on the map. Too few rivals. So Jampur has declared us as their public enemy. We can just, again, click on Jampur and click on their flag to center it on their country. So it's this big gray country to the east of us. And we can return to seeing our country with that button. And the other nation that hates us is Multan. We can center on them, so they're here. So we have two nations, nation to our east, nation to our west, don't like us. Now, it's giving us this alert because we have not declared that we hate any nations in the world. Well, Jampur is going to hate us. Let's just hate them back. We click on the red and black flag and select Jampur. And it will tell us how they feel about us, compare the sizes of our armies. The Jampur's army is 27% weaker than ours, and Multan's is 70% weaker. And none of the three of us have navies. Let's appoint Jampur. It says by setting Jampur as a rival, we will announce to the world that they are our rival. And it will doing so will provide us with the following benefits. We will be more likely to get alliances with their enemies. So if we hate Jampur, and Bengal hates Jampur, then we and Bengal are natural allies. We also get all sorts of bonuses if we try to do nasty things to them. So that's, are you sure? Yes, we are sure. Now, Multan should be our second rival. And it tells us again, we have decided to announce to the world that Multan is our rival. We are more likely to get alliances with their enemies. If we beat them up in battle, we will get more respect, more prestige. And if we embargo them, if we boycott their merchants, it won't upset our merchant class. Our spies will work overtime against them, and we can take more stuff from them in peace deals. Are you sure? Yes. And that alert has gone away. So again, why do we want to set rivals? Well, they hate us, so they will probably seek to do us harm. And if we declare them rivals back, we're more likely to get alliances with the other nations that hate them. So again, if somebody hates Jampur, like Bengal hates Jampur, then Bengal might be our friend. And we can find that out. We can click on Jampur and click on their flag, and it will show us who their enemies and rivals are. So Bengal has declared them as a rival. We have declared them as a rival. So Bengal is one of our natural friends. And we could see when we click on any nation in the world, right here in this diplomacy box, some basic information about them, how they feel about us. The sword tells us that they view us as a rival. And our relations here are on a scale of -200 to +200. They hate us a lot. And it tells us exactly why. And then we can see what kind of government form they are, how good their military tech is, and if they have any foreign relations, if they have allies or vassals, subject nations that serve them. That tells us that Bagelkhand, this nation, is subservient to Jampur. Jampur controls their foreign diplomacy. Okay, hopefully I'm not overwhelming you with that. Just need to know that you need to appoint, well, it's a very good idea to appoint rivals at the beginning of the game if any other nation hates you, because then you can make friends with their enemies and hopefully then destroy them. Hey, we've got some other alerts. First of all, it tells us that we can hire advisors to help us run the country. And how do advisors work? I mentioned that one of our resources, one of our most important resources, are our Monarch Points. We have administrative power, diplomatic power, military power. And they're collectively called Monarch Points because they're highly dependent upon who's running your country. And we can see, if we go to our first tab, our country view, it tells us what our ruler is like. And he has 3 characteristics here. His skill in administration, his skill in diplomacy, his skill in military. And you'll notice that the icons are exactly the same. That we have the scroll and the scroll, the dove and the dove. We have the cross swords and the cross swords. And that's because every month our income in that kind of Monarch Point is based off of a base of 3, and then added to it is the skill of our ruler in that category. So he's got an administrative skill of 1, added to base of 3, tells us that every month we will be earning 4 administrative power. The more the better, because it's a resource that we could spend. And again, their skill can range from 0, which is worst, to 6, which is the best possible. But this video has been 37 minutes, so I think I'm going to stop here and we'll pick up again and look at some more information about the running of our country. So if this is useful to you, please keep watching, and then hopefully I will give you good reasons to like the video and or subscribe to my channel. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again shortly with another video.